Hey, this is Andy Jenkins with the OilyApp podcast. Every single month in OilyApp Pro, we release a new course that is based on some of the best products that Young Living Essential Oils actually has. And so you can get all that information. I'll put a link down in the show notes below where you can just go to oilyapp.com/plus or just go to the homepage and we've got lots of information for you right there. Now, one of the first classes that we did, in fact, this was the third one that I ever shot, was on hustle. Hustle is a word that is tossed out like, I tell people that, especially network marketers, people in home-based businesses, they toss out the word hustle like people toss out beads at Mardi Gras. It is just hustle this, hustle that. What's your hustle? Hustle. And I started thinking about it. I was like, I wonder if hustle's not the best word. Now, the conclusion I came to was hustle's not a bad word. We'll talk about that in next week's episode. But the way that we often approach it is because we so often approach hustle like just run full speed all the time. And the reality is that's one of the things that makes us feel out of sync. You and I were created not even to work in a work-life balance. I think that's actually a misnomer. We were created rather to work in this rhythm. In fact, if you look at creation, the rhythm is 6 days on, 1 day off, 6 days on, 1 day off, 6 days on, 1 day off. And when you look at the Healthy Hustle book, I'll put a link to that in the show notes too where you can get it. Hustle, the image on that book is a drummer. And if you think about a drummer, the drummer is the one that is probably banging it out the hardest on stage. Nobody hustles, for lack of a better term, harder than the drummer. The drummer keeps the rhythm. They physically push the limits. They create the music. But if you think about it, the music only happens not because of just the outright hustle. It happens because of the rest. If you don't have rest, you just have noise. So you see, the rhythm only happens in the beats and the times and the cadence of on and off and on and off. And so what I want to do is in this first episode from that audio of the video class, I want to talk to you about the created rhythm, the created order. And then at the end of this, just kind of listen out because we're going to give you some of the best oils to use if you find out that you're out of sync. Here's the first episode of 3 on Healthy Hustle.
Healthy Hustle. There's this move that I've noticed. One of my favorite stores in the world is Barnes & Noble. And I'll go there literally almost every single week. Particularly my little boys like doing this thing called Saturday sneak outs, which basically means in the morning on Saturdays while everyone else is sleeping, we go eat breakfast and then we get out of the house. And so goodness, we've done that since Salter, the 5-year-old, was just first born. And even before that, I used to do that with the other boys when they were a little bit older. And we generally go eat breakfast, and then we end up at the bookstore because they like to look at Legos and I like books. Now, I've noticed this trend when you get into the business and management books lately, they're not talking about management. They're not talking about leadership. They're not talking about strategic implementation. They're not talking about mission and vision. They're talking about, get this is an incredible lesson of what they're talking about. They're talking about rest and sleep. And so you can go read management books right now by like Arianna Huffington from the Huffington Post, one of the most widely read news online powerhouse media print type things. Has a book completely about rest and sleep. And what they're discovering is that most Americans particularly don't get enough rest. And they're actually saying, again, I just knocked my desk, knocked it all wonky, knocked some holes off the table. What they're saying is that if you don't get 8 hours of sleep per night, like that's ideal. And if you don't do that, you actually don't function at your optimal level. And they're even saying this. In fact, I read this in multiple books that were business books. And I even read one of these was in a combat-related book because I've been studying some things for some veterans related to PTSD. So from 2 completely different environments, I got the exact same message. And they're saying that if you get 6 hours of sleep for 2 weeks, 6 hours. Now, a lot of you guys would be happy and going, oh, yay, I got 6 hours last night. I did it 6 hours. They're saying if you only get 6 hours of sleep, for a total of 2 weeks, then you're functionally living as if you were drunk. Now they don't mean like stumbling over yourself, can't walk and talk drunk. They just mean like you're living at the effective level of like just having a beer buzz constantly. So you think about your decision-making level is down, your productivity level is down, your ability to think crisp, sharp, focused ideas is down, all because you got what many of us would be pleased with, 6 hours of sleep per night. They're saying what you need is more. Now, I thought that was kind of an innovative idea. Oh, all these business people getting on with this idea. People need more rest. They need more breaks. They need, more like, if you go to España where my friend Spencer Thornburg lives, they take a siesta in the middle of the afternoon. Here's the deal, though, is they're getting this. Now, this is essential oil class, but like here's where they're getting this is like straight from, this is actually my Bible. Okay, so it kind of looks like a moleskin, but that's, if you go all the way back deep into the creation story, I want you to see something, and this has something to do with everything we're talking about with oils. So I almost missed this. In fact, I did miss this for years because the story was so, it was so commonplace that I just kind of breezed right over it. Like I never noticed it. But let me show you something. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I want to point something out to you that I promise you, once I show you this, you're going to see it. And every time that you see this story again, like you'll notice this. And in fact, once I show you, there's not going to be any way for you to miss it. And I would say this, for those of you who are Jewish, like you're probably already know this. And so here it is. So day one, God creates light. He says, let there be light. There's light. He saw the light's good. He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day. The darkness he called night. We all knew that. And then here's this refrain that appears over and over. There was evening. There was morning the first day. So I just kept reading. Okay, then God said, let there be waters. He creates waters. There was evening. There was morning the second day. I just kind of kept reading. He goes on the next day. Let the heavens be gathered together. He makes, you have the earth, vegetation, seeds, fruits, plants, each yielding according to their kind. Verse 13, there was evening, there was morning, the third day. At that point, I started noticing something. And it started picking up like there's this refrain that keeps picking up. Now you get to the next day, it like becomes obvious. So he makes the stars in the sky. And verse 19, there's evening, there's morning, the fourth day. You get to day 5, let the waters swim with fish, animals. Okay. He saw it be fruitful, multiply. Verse 23, there's evening, there's morning, the fifth day. And what you lock onto right there is there's this rhythm that happens with creation that so often we gloss over because our days are completely different. And the rhythm is evening first, morning second. Evening, morning. Like there's this rhythm of rest and then activity. Dark and then light. Rest, activity, rest, activity, rest, activity, rest, activity. Like that's built into the rhythm of creation that evening first, morning, daylight second. Rest first, then work. Rest first, and then activity. Now, fast forward, those of you who attend church, those of you who are Christian, that's like I'm in that camp. Those of you who were there, you remember the Easter story. And what happened was Jesus was crucified on a Friday. The Sabbath was Saturday. They take him off the cross. They take him off the cross on Friday by sundown because what's about to happen is the Sabbath doesn't start Saturday morning when the light comes up. The Sabbath starts at 6 p.m. evening and then morning. Okay, so there's this rhythm built into creation that is rest comes first, and then we have activity. It's often like in our culture, we get it wrong. Like we think, man, I'm just going to blow and go. I'm going to be busy. I'm going to be busy, work. And then I may rest. But yet, like in the creation story, like I missed it for so many years, is there's this evening, morning, rest, day, night, day, rest first, then activity, rest first, then activity. It's like what these business books are finally tapping into is rest, then activity. Now, let me show you this. Day 6, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds. It was so. God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, everything that creeps on the earth. And then he said, let us make man in our own image and our own likeness. He created, let them have dominion. So he created man in his own image, in the image of God. He created them male and female. He created them and blessed them, said, be fruitful and multiply. So there's a thing about work right there. We see work happens before the fall. Like, work is not a result of the fall. Work is not a curse. Okay, we'll get to that in video 3. He creates them on day 6. And then he says, evening and morning, the 6th day. So Adam and Eve are created at the end of the 6th day, which starts with night. So evening, night, rest. And then sun comes up. We have the daytime. So the 6th day continues with daytime. And he's making animals, beasts, animals, more beasts. The end of the daylight of day 6, he finally makes Adam and Eve. And then the first thing they go into after God speaks to them is they go into evening of day 7 and morning, which is a day of rest. Like, the first thing they do when they're here is they don't even get to work. Like, the first thing they do when they're here is they go into day 7 and they rest. They're made at the end of the 6th day, and instantly they launch into rest. And oh, by the way, the daylight of day 7, completely, totally a day of rest. Do you see what's going on there? Like, and how, if you and I like tapped into this, like, there's a certain rhythm that just kind of goes on that so often we miss. Here's what's amazing. Like, if you read 1 Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians 11, Paul says that woman is the glory of man. Like, she's the crown of creation. So, like, what he's saying there is, like, when you see a woman walking radiant, then, like, it's a testament to how well the man is loving her and serving her in some sense. Because, like, when he does his job, like, she shines in some sense. She's the crown of creation. So, arguably, she's the most important thing that Adam ever participated in helping create in some sense, if you follow my drift right there. Yet the scripture says like this, when God got ready to make her, which, by the way, like, just a side note, maybe a rabbit trail, it says that God formed Adam out of the dirt. So that's the word that formed in the Hebrew is a word that you'd use of a craftsman, of a master craftsman that's making something like out of wood, chiseling something, making, shifting a cinder block around, carving something out of clay, out of rock, whatever. He formed Adam like a master craftsman. That's the word. But he fashioned Eve like something that's exquisite, like art. Okay, so that's the side note. She's the crown of creation. But it says when Adam participates in this, verse 21 of chapter 2, so the Lord God calls a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and then while he slept, he took up the rib, he closed up the flesh, and then he fashioned like a craftsman, like an artisan, he fashioned her, and then he presented her to him. Like, the most important thing that he was ever involved in, that dude completely slept right through. Okay, so I know you're like, okay, what's the point? Because I came in here to learn about essential oils. I did not come here to learn about creation and creation story and all of that. Here's what I'm saying. Is like, there's this certain way that we're created. There's this certain rhythm to how things are. And it's just how things are. And you can deny it, or you can push it aside, or you say, well, that's a Bible thing, or that's a faith thing, or don't ascribe to it. It's how things are. It's how the universe is wired. And it's finally like business is tapping into it. Like, everything out there is tapping into it. It's like the law of gravity. Even if you don't believe in it, like, it's how things are. So if I hold up this bottle of Dreamcatcher and drop it, like, it's going to fall because gravity dictates that it's going to fall. There's a certain rhythm in creation that is this off, rest, on. Off, rest, on. And when you and I don't have time to functionally be off, it doesn't work for us. Athletes will tell you about the dangers of overtraining. They know that they can't just keep training harder and harder and harder, because what they do is they break down their muscles when they're working. And then at some point, those muscles rebuild. And when they rebuild stronger. But they rebuild when they're taking the time off. Like, there's this off and on. And when you're off, you got to be off. And when you're on, you got to be on. Like, I'm finally learning that this year, that there are seasons when I write, and when I write during the day, like I write hard and I go into it for like 5 or 6 hours. And man, I go and like I hustle hard. But in the evening when I'm off, like I don't touch the computer unless I'm checking email or entering in a receipt or something. Like I don't work. It's like I'm off, right? And so when you're on, you're on. And when you're off, you're off. And like these business strategists are saying stuff like this, like the optimal amount of work time for people like you and me is 36 hours a week. And if we work more than 50 hours a week, like we actually have this diminishing return for our labor. And so at that point, like you keep working, but you're not really getting ahead. Like you're just working. And so maybe you think about that and you think back to times ago, man, like, yeah, I was working like 80 hours a week and I really wasn't getting anything done. Like after a certain time, it just exhausted me. Yeah, right. Because you've missed that rhythm of rest and work and rest and work and rest and work and rest and work. Like you've got to time to that rhythm. And the rhythm isn't just during the day. Like the rhythm is this weekly rhythm of like on 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So like somebody would be scared if I just stop at 3 6s, right? It's like 6 and 1 and 6 and 1 and 6 and 1 and 6 and 1. And those of you who are musicians, you know that like if you're a drummer, like you've got to have this certain cadence. You've got to have this certain rhythm. If you don't have the certain rhythm, like all of a sudden you're just making noise. Like it's no longer music. It's just noise. And in the same sense, when you and I don't tap into this rhythm of creation, it is the same exact thing. And so like questions that I would bring up to you, I've got like some notes here on my smartphone that I'm going to bring to you. It's like, when is the last time that you took off, where you just took Sabbath and you just said, my goodness, like now's the time when I'm just not doing anything. And like not doing anything for you might not mean like you're just sitting in the house, like huddled, you're not doing anything. Like not doing anything might mean you're going to the park, or not doing anything might mean you're watching movies, or you're playing games with the kids, or if you like cooking, you're cooking, or if you like doing the yard, you're doing the yard, but you're not doing anything in the sense of like you're doing the thing that makes the money, where you feel like this intense desire to be productive. You're doing things that are just at pause and at ease and just being present. I mean, I would say like not even just a day off, like when's the last time, and by the way, I did this weekend, like with my kids, I was just like, we're just not doing anything. And I wanted to pick up the computer and write because I had some projects that I'm working on. I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. Like, I think we're going to watch this movie. And me and my son, Levi, and the others to a lesser degree, like we blew through this entire Netflix series. It was like 10 videos long of Lost in Space. And it was sacredly amazing just to do nothing. Now, above that, like when's the last time that you had time during the day to daydream, to let your mind wander? Or is it always on the phone? Because if it's on the phone, like it's doing something. But some of the most creative things happen when we have space, when we're off. That's when our minds reset. Like when you sleep is when your mind resets and it makes connections and it brings everything together from the previous day. And it actually makes connections of what's going forward. Some of you that exercise, you know that this is true too. When you're exercising and not filling your mind with audiobooks, which I love to do, but somehow when there's this free space, like all of a sudden your mind is free to daydream and think about what's possible, and it's free to make connections, and it's free to grow and expand and explore. You see, and so when's the last time that you did that? You see? Like what I'm saying is the pause is important. The pause in music is what matters probably more than the actual notes you play. We could argue about that round and round. But I will say that when you're playing music, the drummer is off more than the drummer is on, right? The drummer's off more than they're on. And in life, like part of hustle is realizing that you can only hustle when you've got this rhythm of being off and at the right time being on. Off and then on. Here's the amazing dream catcher. So at night, this is just not just about like your dreams, like future dreams. Like, yeah, it's like got to have this what's coming forward and what's Because Scripture says, like in Ephesians 2, 8, 9, and 10, that God saved you by grace. He saved you. So it's not of works. So that none of us can boast, hey, I did this. Look at me, I did this. But he said he did this because he planned in advance great works that you would walk in. Like you literally show up for your best life. But if there's not this rest, you can't see it, and then you can't embrace it, and you can't walk in it. And if you're not rested, you can't hustle towards it. Like you've got to have this rest in order to pursue it. So night, goodness, like lavender's a good one for night too. But I think this one more like just during the day, pause and relax and daydream and rest to kind of come down from just the weight of the day, right? And sleep 8 hours. Oh my goodness, like what would happen if you set your alarm at 10 o'clock and just said, man, that alarm goes off, like I'm hitting the bed and I'm not getting up to 6. Like you would step into the rhythm of creation.